is the ICU is 88 or 88% full, I think you said. And last year,
in the medical center, in the big medical center in Houston, which includes all the main hospitals in the medical center.
And last year was at 97, so it's actually less full this year.
Generally, well, this has been the slowest year of my career, Dennis. I've seen fewer patients this year than any year of my career. And if you ask almost every emergency physician, they'll tell you the same thing.
So let me ask you a personal question. When you hear and read, which is stated daily on every regular medium in America, that the hospitals are overflowing with COVID patients, do you then have a scotch on the rocks? What do you do?
You mean so I can cry over it at the lies and inaccuracies?
Yes, so you could.
I take my scotch neat, though, Dennis, not on the rocks. I like to.
Okay, fair enough. The cognitive dissonance that a doctor like you must have is got to be somewhat. It has to have some effect.
Well, and as a scientist, if I may be so bold, I mean, so much in this year from supposed experts has been so unbelievably inaccurate and unfathomably unscientific an approach. You know, as scientists, what we seek to do is get as much information as we can about a problem, lay it all on the table, discuss our opinions with respect, and then everyone can come to their own conclusions, right? What we don't do is do things like the Johns Hopkins study by Genevieve Bryant that recently came out, and once the information is out there that the mortality rate overall in the U.S. for all deaths is about the same this year as last year, immediately suppress the study, remove it from the website, and only be able to find it on web archives that the information was there. I mean, that's ridiculous. We should be exploring why data doesn't conform with our expectations, and that we're not doing so. A lot of people who are getting on CNN and large outlets to push for more lockdowns and to push for ineffective mask policies instead of effective mask policies, they think that they're getting additional power. But I think in the end what they're doing is they're losing the power and credibility to deal with a much worse pandemic which could occur in the future. I mean, the experts have lost so much credibility this year, and for good reason. People do think for themselves in America, thank God. And they've noticed that they've made predictions that weren't consistent and didn't come true, like Fauci in January, where he said it's not a big deal, and then all of a sudden the death rate's going to be 2 or 3%, and then instead the death rate turns out to be maybe 0.2 or 0.3%. And then, when we end up doing these big policies and finding they don't make a big difference, there's this wonderful study that came out from Denmark recently called the Dan Mask Study. And they took thousands of people in a population that's very compliant, and half of them got surgical masks and half of them did not get surgical masks. And they went and they looked over a period of weeks to months to see what percentage of them picked up coronavirus. And there was no difference between the two groups.
And that was surgical masks.
Those were surgical masks. Those are better than the typical cloth masks that you're seeing. And there was good adherence to the masks between the two groups, speaking very generally. And the reason for that is because the virus is smaller than the holes in the masks, and because the masks don't provide a good enough fit. N95s, well fitted, they work great. The positive pressure mask I wear at work works excellent. It will prevent you from getting coronavirus. But you know, instead of pushing for better quality masks that people can wear that would be effective, they think so condescendingly of the public that they tell them lies about what will be effective, and then oppress them for saying otherwise. For example, the CEO of Stanford Health, Kelby Krabenhoff, he got coronavirus, and then months later decided to stop wearing a mask because, as we know, he is almost certainly immune. It's extremely unusual. It happens, but it's extremely unusual to get the virus twice. So he wasn't wearing a mask. He was confronted with this and said, hey, look, scientifically, once you've had the disease, you're no longer susceptible to it. And he was fired as the CEO of this health system in I think, South Dakota. This is not what advances science, is oppressing
It's an
the
amazing
opposition.
story. Amazing story. If you have to wear a mask after having had COVID, then we'll have to wear masks after being vaccinated.
And there is the rub, right? There is the rub. What is the point of the policy? If the point of the policy is reducing deaths and improving people's lives in such a way that we don't have to worry about the fear and can live well, then we should be able to open the economy again. We should be able to send our kids to school again. We should be able to eat at a restaurant again. But it's not. The point seems very much to be about suppressing the West, because the East, the suppressive East, China specifically, Russia to some extent, they are not doing these things. They're moving forward at full steam, advancing their cause. And it's very disturbing. I mean, they believe in taking away your freedom while making those sacrifices themselves. They send their own children to private schools for in-person learning while your public schools are closed down. President Clinton and Bush went to the funeral of Democratic Congressman John Lewis without significant social distancing, while you can't go to a funeral for your father, right? Newsom, the governor of California, and the CEO of the CMA, Dustin Corcoran, whom I actually know, were eating at the finest restaurant, arguably, in California without masks, while telling you that you can't go to dinner with your wife on a date. You know, like Glenn Reynolds says, I'll start believing it's a crisis when they act like it's a crisis. But the point is that what it really seems to be is that it's taught me as a doctor is that the left wants there to be two classes: a privileged class with freedom to do whatever they want, and a lower class that the upper class uses to pay indulgences for their freedom by forcing them to do rules they would never follow themselves. You know, and you can tell they enjoy the cruelty of it. They're bullies. So people shouldn't give in. If you're going to wear a mask, as I do, in most circumstances, you should do it by choice and not dictate wearing it.
Great. Back in a moment.